Lagos never sleeps, and in Lagos, food is not just sustenance, it is culture, identity, and community. Every street corner has a story, and every buka has a legend. But in a certain bustling neighborhood in Lagos State, there was one buka whose legend ran deeper than anyone imagined, and whose story ended in a way nobody saw coming. This is the story of Risi. Her real name was Ashabi, a beautiful name given to her by a mother who believed she was a gift. But the streets knew her differently. The streets called her Risi, meaning mother of Risi, named after her firstborn daughter. The way Lagos mothers are often renamed by the children they sacrifice everything for. Iyarisi ran an Amala Buka in one of the most populated parts of Lagos State. Her shop sat on a busy road where commercial buses honked endlessly. Traders shouted over each other, and the aroma of food was always competing in the air. But somehow, the smell that always won, the smell that made people stop walking and turn their heads, was the smell coming from Iyarisi's kitchen. She was a widow in her early 40s, raising two children, Risi, a teenage daughter, and Shola, a young son. Everything she had, everything she was building, was for those two children. The Buka was not just a business, it was her children's future, and for a while, it really looked like the future was bright. Iyarisi was well known throughout the neighborhood for two things: a perfectly smooth, elastic amala, the kind that stretched just right and never clumped, and a deeply rich, aromatic ogiri, spice stew that customers swore they could not find anywhere else in Lagos. People came from 3 streets away just to eat at Abuka: market women, mechanics, office workers in their lunch break, students, and even a few people who arrived in private cars and tried to act like they hadn't driven across town for a plate of amala and stew. She employed 6 workers, young men and women from the neighborhood, who were grateful for the source of income. Together, they started preparation every morning from 5 a.m. The kitchen was alive before the sun was fully up. The sound of grinding, chopping, and boiling filled the small compound behind the buka. But no matter how early they started, the food never went on sale until 1 p.m. And customers had learned to arrive early and wait because the queue was always long. The workers were capable, loyal, and hardworking. Iyarisi trusted them with almost everything: the cooking, the cleaning, the serving, the cash, almost everything. There was one rule that was not negotiable, one rule that nobody questioned, one rule that had stood since the day the buka opened. Nobody is allowed to serve customers soup. Not the workers, not our children, nobody. Every day, after the stew was cooked, Iyarisi would transfer it herself from the cooking pot into a large sealed pot that she kept behind closed doors. A back room that only she had access to. When it was time to serve customers, she would emerge from that room herself, spoon in hand, and she alone would scoop stew onto each customer's plate of amala. On days when the queue was long and customers were restless, she still would not let anyone else touch that pot. On days when she was tired and her back ached from standing since 5 a.m., she still handled the spoon herself. Workers could bring the amala, workers could pour the egusi, workers could serve the gbegiri or the ewedu, but the stew pot was hers alone. This had been going on for years, and nobody, not her workers, not her regular customers, not her own children, ever asked why. Customers fell into this routine. They would arrive, collect their plate of amala, and then line up, waiting specifically for Iyarisi to come and pour their stew. It became part of their experience, part of the ritual. You haven't truly eaten at Iyarisi's buka until she serves you stew herself. Some customers teased her about it. Iyarisi, you and this your soup. Are you the only one who knows how to use a spoon? She would laugh and wave her hand dismissively. Everybody has their way of doing things. This is my way. And that was always the end of the conversation. Our workers sometimes exchange glances behind her back. They had their own quiet theories. Maybe it was a special recipe she was protecting. Maybe the measurements were a secret she didn't trust anyone with. Maybe she was simply a control freak about her stew. None of these theories felt alarming enough to raise questions about. The stew tasted extraordinary. The business was thriving. What was there to question? Iyarisi's Buka became one of the most talked about food spots in that part of Lagos. She expanded, added more benches, hired more workers, extended her serving hours slightly. She was saving money. She was paying her children's school fees without stress. She had plans to build on a piece of land she had purchased on the outskirts of the city. From the outside, Iyarisi was the picture of a hard-working Lagos woman building her life with her own two hands. But the pot behind the closed door held a secret that not even her children knew. On one otherwise not faithful afternoon, when the buka was full and the queue of customers stretched outside the door, Iyarisi's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, a number she didn't immediately recognize. She almost didn't pick it, but something made her answer. What she heard on the other end sent a chill straight through her body. Her hands began to shake. The spoon she was holding clattered to the floor. Her children, Risi and Shola, had been involved in a ghastly road accident. The caller was a nurse at a nearby hospital. Both children had been rushed in. Their conditions were serious. The nurse's voice was professional but measured, which somehow made it worse. That careful tone people use when they don't want to say it is bad, but everything about their words says exactly that. We advise you to come as soon as possible, ma. Iyarisi did not think, she did not plan, she did not hand over instructions or brief her workers. She grabbed her purse from behind the counter and without a word to anyone, she ran out of the buka, jumped into the first available keke and headed straight for the hospital. Behind her, the buka buzzed with confusion. Customers murmured. Workers looked at each other, uncertain what to do. The pot of stew sat in the back room, untouched. Customers who had been waiting for their stew shifted uncomfortably. Minutes passed, then more minutes. One of the older workers, a woman named Mama Kike, clapped her hands and tried to restore orders. Iyarisi had an emergency. We will manage. Those of you waiting for stew, please be patient. But Mama Kike knew the rule. They all knew the rule. None of them went near the pot. At the hospital, Iyarisi was met with the news that confirmed her worst fears. Both children were alive, but barely. Risi had a broken arm and had lost a significant amount of blood. Shola, the younger one, had taken a blow to the head and was unconscious. The nurses were kind, but their message were blunt. Madam, keep praying. Their chances of surviving are not small, but it is not guaranteed either. We are doing everything we can. Iyarisi collapsed into a chair in the hospital corridor. She who had been strong every single day of her life, who had woken up before sunrise for years, who had buried a husband and refused to fold, who had built a business from nothing, sat in the hospital hallway and wept without restraint. She paced, she prayed, she called relatives. She prayed again. Every few minutes, she would look at her phone, half expecting a call from the booker, half forgetting the booker existed at all. The pots, the customers, the stew, none of it mattered right now. Her children were all that existed. What she did not know was what was unfolding back at the booker. 4 hours had passed since Yarisi left. The customers who had been waiting for stew had been remarkably patient, partly because this was a Lagos booker and delays were not unusual, and partly because Iyarisi's Amala was worth waiting for. But 4 hours was too long. The afternoon was fading into early evening. People had jobs to return to, children to pick up, lives to live. One by one, customers began to stand, gather their things, and prepare to leave. It was at this point that one of the younger workers, a boy named Kunle, 19 years old, new to the job, and unintimidated by rules he found no logical reason for, made a decision. Where una dey go? Make una wait. I go serve you the stew. The other workers froze. Mama Kike east. Kunle, you know the rule. Which rule? Iyarisi don go. The customers dey hungry. The stew dey there. Wetin we dey wait for? There was a moment of stunned silence. Then a few customers who were about leaving sat back. Kunle walked to the back room, opened the door. It had not been locked. Iyarisi had left in too much hurry and approached the large sealed pots. He picked up the serving spoon. He lifted the lid, and then something happened. Something that nobody in that buka, nobody in the entire streets was prepared for. Something moved inside the pot. Kunle stumbled backward, knocking into the shelf behind him. The spoon flew from his hand. He stood there staring, his mouth open, but no sound coming out. Kunle, wetin happen? A worker called from outside. He couldn't answer. He was staring at the pot. Slowly, almost impossibly, something rose from within the thick dark stew, dripping with the deep red oil, coated in the spices that had been simmering for hours, and in one fluid motion, it climbed out of the pot and landed on the floor of the back room with a soft, heavy thud. A tortoise, a live tortoise. Kunle screamed first, then ran. Then everyone else screamed and ran with him. The buka emptied in seconds. Customers who had been sitting calmly moments before were now standing outside on the streets, some still holding their plates of amala, staring back at the open door of the buka, as if they expected something else to come out crawling. For nearly a full minute, nobody moved towards the buka. Then slowly, the way human curiosity always overcomes human fear, people began to creep back. Customers, workers, a few passersby who had stopped to watch. They gathered near the door of the back room and peered in. The tortoise sat on the floor of the back room, looking entirely unbothered, as tortoises tend to do, alive, fully alive. After hours of sitting inside boiling hot stew, after days of sitting inside that same pot, the crowd erupted. A tortoise, a live tortoise. Inside the soup? How? And then the questions came, fast and overlapping, the way they always do when Lagos people are confronted with something that defies explanation. How does a tortoise survive inside boiling stew? Did it not burn? This is jazz. This is confirmed jazz. Is Yarisi using the tortoise to do something to us? To our food? We have been eating this soup for years. What has been happening to us? Is she using our destinies to power our business? Fear turned to anger. Anger turned to noise. Phones came out. Videos were being recorded. People were calling relatives, friends, neighbors. Within 20 minutes, the crowd outside Iyarisi's buka had tripled. Back at the hospital, something happened to Iyarisi. There are moments in life where the body knows before the mind does. A sudden dread, a drop in the stomach, a feeling that something somewhere has broken beyond repair. Iyarisi felt it while sitting in the hospital corridor. Her heart started racing for a reason she couldn't name. Her palms went cold. She stood up abruptly, told a nurse she would be back, and called a taxi. She arrived at the buka to find a crowd of people outside, video cameras raised, voices raised, and a worker standing one side looking guilty and terrified. She saw the faces turned towards her as she arrived, and she saw in those faces something she had never seen directed at her before. Not admiration, not hunger, not warmth, accusation. She pushed through the crowd. She saw the open back room door. She saw the tortoise on the floor, and the Yarisi, the woman who had been strong through everything, fell to her knees on the floor of her own buka. She did not deny it. She fell flat, face up, arms spread, and she began to confess. Her voice came out broken, between sobs. in the way of someone who has carried something too heavy for too long and has finally completely let it go. You have ruined my life, she said. Though it was unclear if she was speaking to the crowd or to herself or to the tortoise sitting calmly nearby, I gave a strict warning. I told everyone, nobody should go near my pot of soup. Why would you do this to me? Then she stopped and she looked up at the crowd and she began to tell the truth. When I started this business, she said, sales were very bad. For 2 whole years, I had only two customers per day. Two customers! I was struggling. My children were going to school on empty stomachs. I didn't know what to do. The crowd was silent now, listening. I went to my friend and I lamented everything. She pitied me. She took me to a herbalist, a babalawo, in Faoke Ogun. We did some ritual and I was given this living tortoise. I was told to put it in my pot of soup. I asked him about the safety of the tortoise. I didn't want it to decay in the soup. I didn't want it to die and contaminate the food. The Babalawo assured me the tortoise will live forever, no matter how hot the soup is. It will never die. It will never decay. It will never affect the taste of the food. But there is one condition. He told me no one except you should ever serve soup to your customers. Nobody should ever pick up that spoon but you. If anyone else puts their hand in that pot, the tortoise will be exposed, and you will either go mad or you will lose your life. The compound was absolutely silent. I have been protecting this pot with everything I have, every single day. That is why I had the rule. That is why I never let anyone near it. Not my workers, not my customers, not even my own children. Because the day someone else touched that pot, she didn't finish the sentence. She fell back flat on the ground, arms spread wide, face turned upward, and she stopped moving. The crowd scattered backward in panic. Mama Kike screamed. Workers rushed forward. Someone called for an ambulance, but Iyarisi did not get up. Iyarisi was gone. The ambulance came, the confirmation came. Iyarisi Ashabi, mother of Risi and Shola, woman of Lagos, maker of the most beloved Amala in the neighborhood, had died on the floor of the buka she had built with her own hands. The tortoise was taken away by some elders from the community who knew what to do with such things. Nobody wanted to eat at the buka again. Within the week, Iyarisi's shop was empty. The benches were removed. The kitchen went cold. The news spread through that part of Lagos the way news always spreads, fast, loud, and mixed with both pity and judgment. People who had eaten at the buka for years tried to remember if anything strange had happened to them. Others insisted they had always felt something strange, while some said they felt fine, and that tortoise had nothing to do with them. None of it brought back Iyarisi. Her children recovered. Risi's broken arm healed slowly. Shola woke up from unconsciousness 3 days after his mother died and was told about her passing in the same breath as being told he was going to live. Iyarisi's story is the kind that Lagos passes down in whispers. It is told in bukas and parlors and church groups and markets. It is told as a warning. It is told as a lesson. It is told as a reminder that shortcuts we take in the dark always find their way into the light. She was not a wicked woman. She was a desperate one. And in her desperation, she made a bargain whose cost she accepted until the day the cost came to collect. The moral lesson is simple, though it never feels simple when you are the one staring at an empty plate and an uncertain future. Do not be in a haste to gather unclean wealth. There are always repercussions for every shortcut. Who knows? If Yarisi had stayed patient, stayed honest, kept cooking her amala with clean hands and a clean heart, maybe her two loyal customers would have become 20, then 200. Maybe her buka would have grown into the best in all of Lagos. Maybe Risi and Shola would have inherited a legacy they could be proud of. Instead, they inherited silence. The still pot behind the closed door is gone now, but the story of what lived inside it and what it cost lives on. And that is the story of Yarisi. Remember, no shortcut to success.